Hey guys, welcome to this beautiful Monday. I am super excited. We're going to be talking about a real life story, friends, of a friend of mine, peer coach, who once upon a time experienced burnout. Now, raise your hand if you know the feeling of burnout, have experienced burnout, or are currently experiencing burnout. This is not a new subject to the podcast. I've brought these episodes before. I am a big fan of talking about difficult things. Burnout, one of them. In my experience as a therapist, as a life coach, and as a working woman, is that we definitely ask for help way too late. And that is the definition of burnout. You have signals all along, and before you know it, you're like at the end of your rope and you're like, holy macro, how do I get out of here? And I just found out that my guest today, Maggie, is Canadian. I'm just overly excited because you guys know that I am also in Canada. I am Canadian and Colombian, and all of my guests, or the majority of my guest speakers, come from the States. So it's nice to have a Canadian fellow. Woohoo!
And I'm an immigrant, just like you.
So you're dual nationality. From where?
Yep, from Poland. So I'm originally Polish. I came to Canada in 2005, and now, yes, I'm a dual citizen.
We have a lot in common, Maggie, then.
Yes, we do. We do.
Maggie and I are peers. We get coached by the same coach. And this is how lucky I get to be. I get to meet amazing humans who then want to share their wisdom with me. Now, Maggie is a business coach. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, Maggie's a business coach for women in business. And she raised her hand to come to my podcast because she thought it would be so important for other humans in general, business owners or not, to hear about my story of burnout and how mindfulness. I was like, Maggie, do you know me? Amazing. Maggie, I used to teach mindfulness all the time. I'm a mindfulness instructor. So to me, this is like, it doesn't even come from me, guys. A person who didn't know I teach mindfulness is coming to talk about how mindfulness actually personally helped you in your personal story of burnout.
Yes.
And you know what? I bet you anything, this audience has a lot of immigrants living in the States, living in Canada, or wherever in the world you're listening from. And I feel that you can get me, you can tell me if you think I'm wrong, but I feel that immigrants, we at least have the thought we have to work extra hard to make it places, right? Because we don't know the culture. We don't have like generations of connections where we're like, oh, my mom knows somebody who knows somebody. We don't have any of it.
None of it.
Right. And we have to work really hard. And so I think many of us are overachievers. And yes, we get to amazing things, but also at a really high cost.
Yes. Agreed.
So I just would love to hear your story. Introduce yourself, tell us something fun about you, and then let's just dive in.
Okay, so quickly. So as I said, my name is Maggie Perotin. I live in Greater Toronto area. I'm originally from Poland. I immigrated to Canada when I was 27. So, Poland, communist regime. I was born under communist regime, and then it collapsed, and it was going through a lot of changes. So when I got out of university, young adult, big dreams, started working. And I had work, which was good because the unemployment at that time was 20%. But I was making like $300 a month. And I was like, I have these big dreams. It's hard to do that. So that's one of the reasons why I immigrated to Canada. And quickly, because I'm so fun fact about me, I'm trilingual. So maybe Olga like you, I speak Polish, English, and French, and I have an accent in every one of them by now, even in Polish, because I don't use it that often. My husband is French. So I just use it like when I talk to my parents. I kind of have an accent, all three of them. But people can't point it unless they see me. Like if they see me, then they're like, yeah, you're kind of European, they get from the looks. But if they don't see me, they're like, you have an accent, but I don't know from where. So that's, a fun fact because those three languages kind of like mix
up.
Yeah. So I've been in corporate world before I became business coach. I had a good career in the corporate world for 15 years, 13 years of that, I was a people leader. So I led teams and I've done many different things. And during that time, I burned out. I also became a mom of young kids. So that's what got me to mindfulness. And then that also helped me to get out of burnout. So, quick story.
Okay, you know what has been a repetitive theme in my coaching over the last, because I just started. So the time of this recording is January. You guys are probably listening to it later in the spring or beginning of the spring. But as you guys know, I travel. So I want to get all my recording done before I get out of this beautiful winter. But the theme over the last few weeks has been an awareness of how, and I only coach women for your context for you, Maggie, how after becoming mothers, actually, they sort of like lost identity of I exist. The I got erased and it was them. I live for them. I do for them. Coming from a great, beautiful place. Obviously, all of us are nurturers. I am a mom myself, and I know the last 3 years have been the most challenging years to find balance, whereas before I just didn't think about it. Balance was there. And so I do think that like that might have to do. I think that many of the women, moms, especially around this audience, might be thinking like, it's true. Ever since I became a mom, I became invisible. I don't see myself unless it's to be of service to the world.
Yeah. And it was exactly that. And even fun that, like, I'll get back to it to tell you like my experience, but also like fun fact that even getting to mindfulness, it wasn't for me. It was for my kids that I led there, right? Like, because then after that, I realized, right? Like, so young mom, 2 young kids, my kids are 2 years apart. Now they're 8 and 6, but at that time they were whatever 4 and 2 or 3, and I don't remember the exact timing, right? Or 3 and 1. And having a demanding corporate career in a demanding industry, and also wanting to do well, because I'm a Sagittarius. I love to learn and I love to grow. So like for me, it wasn't, not to take away from stay-at-home moms, because like hats off that they can actually do it, because I was like, I can't do it. Like I need that work and I love my kids to death. So trying to do both well was so challenging that, I wasn't the best mom for my kids sometimes. Like I was losing patience. By the end of the week, I was just exhausted. Like Thursdays were the worst. And I'm like, I can't go on like this for them. I want to be a good mom for them. I want to, not feel guilty that I lost my patience and so on. And that sort of led me. So like, I wasn't even on the list. We know, like we have like, the list, we were last on the list. I was like going back, like I wasn't even on the list of like taking care of somebody. Like I wasn't there. I just wasn't there.
I just want the listeners to ask, are you on your list?
Yes.
Like, are you yourself on your list? Like I was 23 when I burned out, and I think it was a blessing in disguise. I was not a mom yet, but I had just come from not a communist regime, but a very, very civil war, lots of terrorism happening in my country. And I had just come from like all of that trauma, fleeing, being persecuted, to being here, to having to learn the language, and you don't have time to process. And I feel like this happens to many people. We just go through life and we don't have a moment to stop and process what we've been through. We're just on to the next step because we're in survival mode. So on to learning the language, on to studying again, on to getting a job, on to like helping my family. And before I knew, I was like trying to save the world. And like you said, I was not on my list. I remember thinking like everybody, like the cat of my friend who I don't know is on the fucking list, but I am not on my list.
Exactly. So it's the same with me. And what through my, so when it started, so I wasn't burned out yet at that point, but I was just not happy the way I was showing up for my kids sometimes, right? It wasn't all the time, but sometimes. And I remember I was actually on vacation. My sister lives in Germany, and we were on vacation. I was with the kids there, and she started reading a book about mindfulness. And I picked up that book, and she had it in Polish, and I picked it up there. And you know what? Like it was like 6 weeks, finding peace in a frantic world, an 8-week plan, mindfulness, right? And I started reading and I'm like, I need this. I want this. And so I left and I bought the book in Canada in English now. The 8-week plan took me, I think, 3 months.
Was it Full Catastrophe Living?
Sorry?
What was the book? Full Catastrophe Living?
No, it was called Mindfulness, an 8-week plan for finding peace in a frantic world. That's what it was called.
Okay. Everybody take note. And if it takes you 20 weeks,
even if it takes you 20 weeks, I was just going through it and I was like, and it helped me so much. Like I was against, meditation at that time. I had all the misconception you can have about meditation, right? I was like, that's not me. My brain is going all the time. I'm go, go, go. But I've noticed that even adding like one meditation a week, like on the weekend, 10, 15 minutes, such a huge difference. It made the way I showed up, the way I handled my job and the kids and so on. I was like, oh my God. And then, so that helped me. But then came the situation in the business, or not in my business, but like in the corporation I was working for, that I burned out. And that was the time my kids were a bit older, but that wasn't that long after, like maybe a year or two. Again, don't remember the timing, but like a couple of years later, where my company made some not the best decisions about the business they took on, or at least how they took it on. And they they took on a lot of business and wanting to go into a market. So they priced very low and they told us like, here you go. You have no help, even though you have a job already and more, and do it in 3 months. It's like one of those things when you're like, sure, I'll try. Right. And because talking about maybe it's because I'm an immigrant, maybe it's because you want to do well. So you try to succeed and you start working nonstop, the weekends, non-break, and still failing, getting beaten up by your boss or an executive or the client because you just can't deliver what was promised. It's kind of like you're set up to fail no matter how you try. And I got to the point talking about Sagittarius when I just felt trapped in the corner because no matter what I did, no matter what I did, it just didn't work. I was exhausted. I felt like, again, no matter how much I try, it's not going to work. Like there were times I remember when I was sitting in front of my computer, paralyzed, not being able to move, being scared to like write an email. And I had work piling up to my like eyeballs. And I was like, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. Never happened to me before. Like I always know what to do.
Because you felt you were giving all of what you had.
Yeah.
And you were giving your everything. You were sacrificing things that were not intended to be for the job, but you were giving that. And yet you were ending your day feeling, it's a failure. Like me at my best, quote unquote, at my best, giving everything is not enough.
It's not good enough. You're behind. You're getting, you go meeting to meeting. You get beaten up, not metaphorically, but like metaphorically, right? Yeah. Beaten up. And there was this moment when I feel trapped and Sagittarius me just freaked out saying, no more. That's it. Like, it's ridiculous. I'm exhausted. I'm working like a horse, I'm sacrificing time with my kids because I worked weekends. I wasn't taking breaks. Like I was, going to work, coming back, sitting in front of my computer for what? For people to be beating me up and nobody picking up the phone and saying, hey, Maggie, like, how are you? Are you okay? Do you need help? And so that sort of got me. So then, I started looking for another job. But
from a place of exhaustion. So how was that even like?
I was just like, process. I don't care. Like, I'm just going to do something. Now, I didn't change it because the situation changed. But what I did is during that time, I'm like, well, I have to do something, right? Like, it's okay. Like, I can't change this situation until I change a job or whatever, but I have to do something for me. And I signed up for sort of like high performance coaching for like good habits and so on. And that coaching changed me. like just changed me. It was 12 weeks, I think. I don't remember, but I think it was 12 weeks, week by week, taking responsibility, looking what can you do, right? Like, okay, I can't do this, but what can I do? And setting up some good habits, just like, again, changed my life. And then, the way I got out of it through that, but also through the situation, the company realized that our department would like fall apart if they don't change something. Like, we were falling apart. They changed the leadership. The new leader came and like, oh my God, what is this? Like, I'm in trouble. He was like, can you help me fix it? I'm like, yes, but here are my rules. Like, here are my conditions. I will help you, but I'm done. I'm done. Like, I was so mad. Like, I'm done. And he was like, yep, okay, no problem. Just help me. I'm in trouble.
Give me one. Hold on. First of all, want to pick up that coaching saved you. Everybody,
yes.
did you hear that?
Yes.
Coaching saved her. 12 weeks is not a long time to reverse something that has been happening for a long time. And then when they ask for your opinion, for your help, you said yes, but these are my rules. So in those 12 weeks, you grew some backbone and boundaries and assertiveness.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
And that was big because like in the past, I would be like, yeah, I can help you, no problem. Right? He was like, yes, I can, but this is what I want. This is what I need.
Love it. And you would say that this is due to the coaching you had?
Sorry?
You will say that you having the ability to put your conditions came after doing the work in coaching?
Definitely. Like it was, I guess, the combination of me just being fed up and looking for another job and not caring anymore, like got into the point, but also through the coaching and knowing that like, that's also okay. Having boundaries is okay, right? Not fighting, but like standing up for yourself is okay, because if you don't do it, who will?
Yeah.
Clearly, nobody.
And like the problem is they'll replace you at work. They'll find another manager. They'll find another immigrant who's thirsty to work. Another woman willing to sacrifice weekends. But who would replace you at home? Like your kids just have you.
Yeah.
You're the only mom.
And like family is important to me. Yeah, I might not be the material for the stay-at-home mom, but family is important to me. And I definitely don't want to sacrifice, right? Whatever balance means for me, I don't want to sacrifice that. Right. And I wasn't willing to. One of the reasons why I went on my own, started my coaching business, right? It's like I didn't want to. So that one of the reasons was I don't want to be put in that situation. Because even if I change the jobs or whatever, my thinking was I can't control everything. I can, in other people. So I could be put in a similar situation. I don't want that. And with my own business, now, having boundaries and all that, the skills that I developed, I can control that better, right?
Yeah.
I decide what situations I put myself in.
So tell me how mindfulness, so like years before you had read this book on mindfulness, it took you longer to implement it. And then you did that open you up for maybe coaching? Like how do all these things marry your way into out of burnout?
It definitely... that opened me up to understand that when you take care of yourself, when you spend some time, whether it's meditating and so on, it actually works, right? So that little results that I got from the book opened my mind like, oh, okay, this stuff works, right? So then when I was in that situation and the coaching opportunity came up, I was like, yep, that's what I can do. And I'm going to just follow it, right? Like I wasn't even questioning whether that will work for me or not. I'm like, this is exactly what I need. And I'm going to do it and I'm going to follow it because, it's either that or I will end up in a hospital. And I definitely didn't want that.
It's what I call, oh my God, not leeway. It's how in like, oh my God, I can't think of the word right now, but it's a reward. When you think of continuing the path that you are on, which is not healthy. And like, let's be honest. We all know when we're on the path that is not healthy. Like you have the red flags, you have your inner voice screaming, your body physically, either you lack energy, you lack motivation, you're just unhappy. You wake up in the mornings and you're like, shit, I've got to start a day. Like you went out of your own life. You're not excited about your life.
Yeah.
So those are your signals, right? Like, and we have been, I speak for myself. I've been there. I know exactly what that feels like. Opening my eyes in the morning and being like, oh, feels heavy to be living this life this way. But you go from thinking, if I keep going this parallel life, if I change nothing, your results at the end of that tunnel were you in the hospital, you know, you didn't want that. Like, much. I can see how I'm going to run myself out to the ground, down to the ground. And then you had like a moment of wisdom and clarity where you're like, it cannot be the only way. There's got to be another way. So the mindfulness came into mind. You took on, you could have easily said, I'm not in the mental space to get coached.
Oh yeah, I could have said I didn't have time because I was busy like a crazy person. I was working nonstop, right? But I was like, no. Like, I'm going to do it for me, right? I have to do something.
And then you saw the reward. What did you think the reward was at the end of that?
Oh,
before you even got into it.
Oh, before I got into it, is that like, I'm doing something for me. I was, I guess I was tired, or I got to the point where, if I don't take care of me, nobody will.
Exactly. Oh, what a blessing. So it's almost like burnout saved you.
Yeah.
From a life of unhappiness and like rely on somebody else to take care of you.
Yeah. You know what? Like, I'm grateful for it because I wouldn't have been where I am today, which I love where I am today. So
yes, this life wouldn't have been possible. And I know you probably haven't come from a communist upbringing country. I can't imagine it being flowers and rainbows. And so I think back of all of the difficult life experience I had to go through that were part of my life, part of my road. And when I think back of them, I'm like, I have found gratitude in each of them. Mm-hmm. Even if it sounds insane that people be like, but how can you be grateful for that one thing, which is so negative? It wasn't, because without it, I wouldn't have, perhaps be sitting here in this comfortable house, looking at this beautiful snowfall, helping hundreds of people, right? So like, I do believe burnout has a gift, and it might look different for all of us. But if you got down the path of burnout, I believe you've been ignoring yourself for too long. And so the gift is you paying attention to you. Yeah. Or like, so you just like say like, I exist. I matter. I am here.
Put myself on the list.
Yes. Add the name to the list. Like, how do you begin your days, Maggie? Now that you're not you're not a burnout.
I have like an amazing routine that I built over the years. So I want to say it didn't start this way. So please don't freak out saying, oh my God, I have to do it. It started very little, but my days. So I have like a 2-hour routine, but I get up early.
Same.
2-hour routine. So I get up, I spend a few minutes stretching, about 15 minutes, and then I meditate. And then for a few minutes, again, not long, 10, 15 minutes. And then I journal, like do some coaching and stuff. And then I do a little bit of self-development. So I listen to something, watch something, and so on. That about takes me 2 hours in the morning, but it's early, before my kids are up, before they go to school. And I'm done. I'm set for the day. And then of course, like I do that pretty much every day. Then I have in the evening, I have so I call it mindset maintenance, quick journaling. And then, I walk, I'm active. I'm really making sure that I eat well. I'm active, and I do some like little things here and there throughout the week, whether, it's a bath or some me time and so on. That are more, they're not as scheduled, right? They're not as like, every day I do that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But every day I have my routine. I'm somewhat active, whether it's a walk with my husband at lunch most of the time or something else. And then some extra stuff. But it took me years.
Yes. This is why I ask you, because I feel that for all of us who have experienced burnout, if we learn the lesson,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we don't learn the lesson. And so I have clients who have burned out more than once. And I'm like, how did that happen? Did you miss the lesson the first time? How do you come back to burnout? In my opinion, you go back to the same lesson because you didn't learn the lesson. And life is like, here, I tried to teach you once, but here we go again, same lesson. So, but for those of us who learned the lesson to me was to be on that list. And that ever since becoming a mom, before it wasn't so structured for me because I just had time and like there was time for me, plenty of time for me. And I just was intentional about that time. But ever since becoming a mom, I realized, shit, if I don't start my day with me, it's never going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like before I know I am in all the roles and needed everywhere because as coaches, we're needed, as moms, we're needed, as wives, we're needed. And the day will come to an end early or late. You're exhausted, you do it all, and you're like, I'm not on that list.
Yeah.
So I also am a big proponent of starting the day with you. And I love your routine looks very different from mine because people can just hear like it's gotta be whatever makes you feel good. You know, like
exactly. And like I've built it over time. It wasn't when I was commuting, even before COVID, to my job, right? It wasn't that long. And it wasn't that because I just couldn't, right? I didn't have that time. I didn't have that built in and so on. And then even that, like I always, at least once a year, I review it and say, okay, does that still work for me? This is the thing. So even like this year, I made those little changes where I introduced a little bit more self-development in that routine because I'm like, okay, that's the time where it's really now baked. It's like a habit. So I know I can rely on it like 95% of the time when I'm really consistent with it. So that's what I kind of implemented more intentionally. Where last year it was more sporadic, let's just say, right? Like I still journaled and so on, but like that self-development piece was occasionally. So I made it more, I think. So like I always tweak it because I just like you, I believe that as your life circumstances change, you become a mom or your kids are older now, they don't need you to help them dress up. They'll do their own breakfast, like all those things. They happen at some time. You're like, oh, I have more time, right? So like, or I can spend that time differently. So you want to be intentional about it.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And I would say, as I'm being coach, I learn new things and I'm like, oh, I'm going to implement this one thing. Or as I am doing self-development, I hear books and leaders and I'm like, oh, I'm going to try that one thing. Like I started doing polar bear baths in the morning.
You are?
After reading so much
look at those, I'm like,
oh, so it's part of like, no, right now it's not part of my everyday, but last year we did it for all winter, my husband and I. And it was freaking phenomenal. Now we're into the sauna. So we're doing sauna every morning. The complete opposite.
You're going from cold to hot. That's a funny.
And like eventually we just order everything to build a sauna here. We already have our deep freezer. We actually get into a deep freezer that we keep the water at 0 and we just go in. Except for our head, the head stays out, and we challenge each other. Who can make it to 5 minutes? Obviously, once Chris crossed that threshold, I was like, fuck. So now I stay the 5 minutes just to say I did it too. But we challenge this way. So as we learn, as we grow, and as we evolve, that morning routine might change, might look different. I'm also incredibly flexible, for those of you listening, to how I feel that morning. So I really love intense training. And that's one of the things I do in the mornings is I lift or I walk. But if I am PMSing, if I'm not feeling like high energy and I can tell my body in the morning is like, I just want to go slow and easy, go for a walk. Like I don't make it a problem, but I still show up for myself. I think at the end of the day, that's the inner child wants to know that you have been attended, right? Like, so you're attending that. Yeah. Awesome. So what does that look like now for you? Like being a business owner can also be an outlet to work as many hours as we can possibly work because work never ends, right? And it's our baby. And it's like, I could spend all the hours. I love what I do. I'm sure you do too. So I could literally sit here in my office, don't see the time by. So how do you keep that balance now? How do you teach your clients to do that?
I imagine. So You're right, right? And especially again, when it comes from that service and so on, that work energizes me as opposed to some work that I was doing in corporate that I was good at, but I wasn't passionate about and was draining me. It was stressing me out. Whereas here, like coaching client, working with the clients and everything around, like is the same. I could just do it nonstop. I get a lot of energy, but again, I learned how to set the boundaries, and it doesn't mean that those boundaries are flexible to say. Sometimes it's like, okay, today I want to spend a little bit longer because I just want to finish something or whatever, right? I committed to a deadline and I want to honor that deadline. But overall, I set my boundaries to finish at a certain time so I can have, working from home helps and not commuting is amazing. I love that. To have dinner with my family or do something, whatever, right? Like in personal life. So I just learned to set and honor my boundaries most of the time and be very intentional is when I'm allowing that flexibility to work and that it's really for something important. And something that's not coming from, hustle, for example, right? That it's coming from, okay, I committed to it. I want to do it. Here is, I'm going to sacrifice that day or this, but I see the results it's going to create for me and not just like.
And that's where the intention comes from.
Right.
You're not like
being really intentional about it. Yeah. So that's where it comes. Right. And also, like, as you say, having the experience of burnout and really learning my lesson and really not wanting to repeat that allows you to be more firm with the boundaries when you have to.
100%. Because now like the leverage, right? Like the leverage of doing the thing is that you love your reward.
Yes.
But if you don't, you also now physically remember what that was like. And if it was a bad burnout, like me, I was out of commission. I was totally out of commission. I couldn't even imagine myself working as a server if I tried to. Like I just couldn't bring my brain to be of service. I wanted to literally be home and nobody touch my brain. I don't want to think. I was searching for jobs that didn't require thinking. That's the level of exhaustion I was under. I want to ask you, like, so let's talk about the emotional part of burnout. If you don't mind going there, like I believe one must believe something about oneself to not even be on the list, right? And so I can see what logically started happening to your brain, like you were describing.
Yeah.
Well, I'll end up in the hospital and then I'll be no help for my kids, for my work. That's no, I don't want to go there. So that was a huge motivator for you to start walking the other way. What do you think happened to you emotionally? What emotion grew within yourself that allowed you to go from like, it's just me, I can run myself down to the ground if I must, to saying, hold on, I matter. Like, do you recall maybe a change of emotions, a change of
The first one was anger. Was angry. It's like really pissed.
At you, at yourself, at the environment?
At the whole situation. Part of it was me. Like, what the hell am I allowing to happen?
Right.
Part of it was at the company, not a specific person in say, because it was, let's just say group effort. So at the company itself, that they made those decisions and allowed their own people, because I wasn't the only one in that situation, right? Of course, I'm talking about my experience. I don't really know everybody else's experience, right? So I'm just thing, but I wasn't the only one in that situation being stressed out and so on. Whether others burnt out or not, I don't know, right? But so I was angry that this happened. And again, I was just angry and I said, no more. Like, it was just that anger triggered me. Like, I matter. I'm going to put myself in the list. And if I don't do something, nobody will. And from now on, I'm going to do it. So like, that definitely was the first emotion that kind of like started the whole thing. I was just pissed.
It's like, I love, you know what? I went through a divorce when I was 29. Yeah. And I remember sitting my ass in counseling. I was like, I am not leaving a counseling session until I figured out how did I end in this? How did I make choices this way? Like, why am I here? Wonderful man, just not the one for me, And so, and
this is another thing we have in common.
yeah. Maggie, are you my soul sister?
No, I'm serious. Yeah. I also, my current husband, who is totally the love of my life. I love him to death. And it's like, we have an amazing relationship. It's my second husband. So I divorced, how old I was? 31.
There you go.
Like around the same age.
We mature. No. So
Yes,
I remember sitting my ass with a psychologist and saying to him, I will not leave until I figured this thing out, like what parts were missing. And I remember him saying to me, your problem all along is that you've never felt anger. You need to feel angry. And I was like, what? But anger is such a weird, I'm so passive. And he's like, that's the problem. You need to have some fire under your butt so that because what I learned then is that anger has a beautiful side effect. And that is that you're saying that's not fair. Like that anger that you experienced was you saying, this isn't fair and something has to happen. But when you don't experience that anger, like me, when you think like anger is bad, so you just don't feel it ever, then you're never willing to just come in and say like, so what will make this right? Right? So like I learned back then that anger could actually be a great thing to have because it's what ultimately transforms, in my own understanding, transforms into courage.
Yes.
In fact, this is unfair, so I'm gonna have now the courage to do something about it. And is that anger has like this fire, something went in my eye, has that fire that propels you to like, I'm gonna make this shit fair. This isn't fair, and here's me trying to make it fair. Yeah. So you feel anger, and then you're like, I'm gonna make this right. Yeah. What was the next emotion? Make you think.
I guess the next emotion, you're right. Like it was courage to do something about it, sign up for that coaching, right? Because sometimes it can be scary. Hey, I'm spending X thousands of dollars to coach for me when I'm not on the list, right? Like that doesn't happen too often where it's for me. And even like, because that situation, and again, I don't remember, but it was within a few months, right? When I signed up for the coaching and then the leadership changed and they tell me, okay, can you help me, right? So it was the courage to say, yes, I can, but I have some boundaries, I have some conditions. And if not, I am actively looking for a job and I'm going to leave, right? Whereas before I would never have done it. So there was definitely courage to do that and then follow through and then continue, right? And then it was, I guess, determination to just follow through and finish, like go there.
Awesome. So what do you think prevents you today from burnout? Like why is burnout not an option for you?
I'm on the list.
You're on the list, exactly.
I'm on the list. The understanding really like deep in my body and bones, understanding the importance of self-care. So having now the habits and routines of self-care is burnout prevention because, starting the day right, having some good habits and like sleeping enough and so on, it's just being active, right? And eating well, that ultimately prevents you from burnout because then you also learn how to listen to your body, how to listen to the cues when you're maybe in that hustle energy or like more into like this frantic energy, right? And you can stop yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And then, having my own business.
You're what?
Having my own business, not working for a big corporation, that works too. But, that's just the circumstance. Like once you know really and have those boundaries and have established, like for me, those are really skills, right? Those are life skills, right? Talking about life coaching, those are really life skills where I can set boundaries, I honor them, I have courage to tell other people about them. I have some good habits that I honor and so on. Then that ultimately really prevents you from burning out.
I just love that you've used the word honor to talk about your habits as opposed to commitment. Although I know you're committed, but you're committed to honor, you know, and it's a beautiful concept for people to understand. Sometimes we think of, at least I coach my clients in this a lot because they feel like, how do I commit to this? And I always think of like, I love this idea of honoring because it's for you. Honor your word, honor the things that you say that matter to you. And enter that space of that activity, of that habit from a place of honoring, right? Like, it's gonna make me feel proud tomorrow. Like, I'm deserving of this. This is all for me. I love it. So for all of you listening, if you are in burnout, ask yourself, am I on the list? Am I being coached? Is there somebody? Like, I cannot emphasize that enough. And I always say this disclaimer is not because I'm a coach. I became a coach because of all the help that I've received. Okay. Even as a helper, because I've always been a helper, as a social worker, as a therapist, working for a company, and then on my own, always been of service. I understand what it's like to want to give 24/7. That is 100% my personality. But the entire time, since I remember being a 19-year-old, like, I've always looked for who can help me with this? How can I share the load in my brain? And the only time this was not happening is when I burn out. And I'm not saying that's the reason I burn out. I burn out because I personally stopped taking responsibility for the taking care of me. So, like, what helps you take care of yourself? And it could be your team, it could be your spouse, like, you know, like that, taking responsibility, having any kind of routine that helps you focus on you, that revitalize you, that fills up your cup. You guys know what that is for you. And if you don't, that's a starting point.
Yeah.
What fills up my cup? I know that I didn't know myself anymore. I'm like, what is it that I love doing anyways?
Yeah. And that's what you want to do. Like, you want to pick the routines that really work for you. As I say, like, you work out very like strong, right, in the morning. And my husband does the same thing. Like, he is working out in the morning. I know that that's not for me.
That's not for you.
It's just, I can't. Yes, I stretch to move a bit, but for me, I love the quiet time, reflection, journaling, reading. That's me. And that's why I do it, right? And I don't try to make myself work out just because it works for others.
Exactly. I love that. And that's what you were saying, knowing yourself, right? Like, that's when I guess mindfulness came in to give you a hand, which was just like, get to hear your body and then listen to what it's saying and act according to that, versus the logical mindset, but everybody's working out.
Therefore, I should.
Yeah, exactly. To me, this is new over the last 2 years. Before that, all I could ever do, roll out of bed and go into the hot yoga room and practice hot yoga, not talk to anybody. And that was perfect. I'm craving less of that. I'm craving more of like, and so it's evolving. And I think that's important for people to know. Your body's going to need different things from you. So it's not like set in stone. What else can we tell them that has been helpful? Nutrition. You talk about nutrition. I think we are what we eat.
Yeah, we do. And then, of course, enough sleep, right? When we're moms, we know, right? When you're sleep deprived, it really affects you, right? It really gets you more tired, and it's harder to go through the day. It's harder to, be in charge and manage and stay calm and grounded, and especially when unexpected things happen. So having enough sleep, and yes, sometimes it's hard because if you have a small child, I went through many, many nights, broken sleep or no sleep and so on. But when you can do that, once the children do sleep through the night and so on, I did cut out watching TV till whatever, whether I liked it or not, because out of habit, in order for me to just know my sleep is more important, right? My rest is more important. So intentionally changing some of those habits that weren't serving me and moving them to ones that did.
I love that. Like, scrolling at night, like, that wires up your brain. And then you wonder, why can't I sleep? And you're like, it's just helping me fall asleep. Well, no, it's preventing you from sleeping.
Right. Or, like, sometimes, like, we're in those, like, when you get into the habit of, let's say, watching TV before, you end up just watching stuff that you don't even enjoy. Like, it happened to me. I was watching stuff that I didn't enjoy. And then I was mad at myself, like, what the hell am I doing? Now I'm tired and it's late. I'm not going to have enough sleep. I cut that out. It took time, but one of this, like, okay, no more. If I'm watching TV, it's intentional. I want it.
Yes. Is
And I
adding.
choose it, and not it's because my body or my subconscious brain kind of like got into the habit and chooses it for me. And then when I realize, I'm like, oh shit, that's not what I want to
like
do.
it.
Now I'm mad at myself.
I read in a great book called Headstrong by Dave Asprey that past 11, everybody should be asleep by 11 p.m. is what he says. Because at 11 or just past 11, your brain gets a second wave of energy. And once you're in that wave of energy, you're like, I'm up, what's up? Like it just kind of recharges itself. And I'm like, holy crap, he's right. Like, you know, when you're like, I'm going to fall asleep. But if you make it past it, then you're like, I'm wired up. I can't fall asleep. So food for thought. But like, I do believe that night routine is as important as your morning routine because what's coming is going to restore you or not. Maggie, thank you so much for coming into the podcast. It's been like a fun conversation. I hope this is helpful to all of you listening. I want to celebrate this month of January, and it's not over. We've had over 5,000 downloads of the episodes
Congratulations.
This just month. And so I know there's a lot of people listening to us, and that's why I wanted to bring people like yourself, Maggie, to talk about not just like your expertise, but like your human experiences and how you've turned it around. And now you're coaching people to run business so that it's not sacrificing all their well-being or their families. So for any of you business owners looking for a business coach, Maggie, just give us a 20-second spiel on like, who do you coach? How do they get a hold of you?
So who do I coach? Service-based business owners. So if you have a service business, I'm your girl, I guess. And that's how I coach. So without overwhelm, without burnout, very strategically with some good habits and so on. How can you find me? So I do have a podcast as well. If you love podcasts, it's called The Diamond Effect. And you will find it on whatever platform you're listening to that podcast. Or my business name is Stairway to Leadership. So stairwaytoleadership.com. It's my website.
Awesome. All of which will be attached to the show notes. So you just have to scroll down into the show notes and you'll find Maggie's website, Maggie's podcast. The podcast is around business coaching, Maggie?
Yes. So podcast is on really things that I coach on. So thinking like the CEO, really strategically, some business strategy, and also some good habits and so on. So like all those topics are your business. But this
amazing.
It's all about being a high performing leader in your business, and then your business high performs as well.
Makes sense. And so you guys, if you like this episode, let us know. Give us a thumbs up, leave us messages, share it with somebody else who you think is on the verge of burning out or has the potential to burn out, and just let them hear these episodes, especially if you think that could be helpful to them. I'll see you guys next Monday. Thank you so much, Maggie, for coming into the podcast. And I hope many of you business owners go down to follow Maggie and get her to coach you, because you've got to thrive. And so will your business.
Thank you, Olga, for having me. And thank you for listening, everybody.
Talk to you guys soon. Hey guys, Olga here. I am super excited to be inviting you this spring to do two things with me. First of all, come detox your mind. No matter who you are, how great you are at thinking, it is impossible to always be thinking positively, but we can always think intelligently. And so I'm inviting you for 5 days of cleaning your mind from the weeds that have been growing over the last few months that need to get out so that you can feel light and confident and attached to your purpose. Come to Detox the Mind from April 24th to the 28th. It's 5 days, $97. And you will begin to feel so uplifted and with a much clearer mind. The second invitation is to join me inside Reset Your Mindset, my 12-week coaching program that starts on May 12th, and the registration is now open. Both of these opportunities are on the show notes. Head over there and click on the ones that you want. You can absolutely do both.
and you will absolutely see results. All right, talk to you guys soon. Hopefully I'll see you in there.